On today's video, we're not covering power, but I want my audience to know that I will be back to power, just haven't had the bandwidth to get into it this week. Today, what we're talking about is politics and the state of this country. Subjects we're going to cover today: white privilege. And we'll have a special guest who happens to be a white guy to talk about it. We're going to talk about income inequality. I just checked a CBO report, and ladies and gentlemen, this is horrible. It is very horrible. We're going to also talk about MAGA male molesters. Yes, you heard that right, because it is a lot of them. And last but definitely not least, we are for sure going to cover what exactly can the Democrats do to win voters back and make things happen. That and so much more. The Lamont Tyson Life Gains YouTube Politics of Being Black podcast starts right now.
I'm up early for the dealers come out. Everybody is outside till the killers come out. You ain't eating, you just act full. I'm impactful. Dozen funerals in a month. I got that pull. I will give it to niggas in all rap forms. Ignatius out right now on all platforms.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We in here. I got my big homie, the Dark Left. How you doing today, brother?
I was ready to start lifting. I was going to go back into my gym after I heard the intro music. I was feeling it. No pre-workout either. I was just going to go.
For all my lifters out there, you know what it means when somebody say they don't need a pre-workout. I don't know if he drank some coffee, took some green tea, but man, you know you ready to go lift some damn weight on that day when you don't need a pre-workout.
Oh, I was ready. I was feeling it. Yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are not familiar with my guest, Dark Left, his link is in the video description. Be sure to go check him out on TikTok. He is one of the most hottest TikTokers running right now. And I want you guys to get a little feel of what he brings to the table in political conversation. Take a look at this.
These are the three things MAGA will never admit. One, Trump is terrible with money. Doesn't matter if it's his money or yours. He's like a college kid turning 21 who got his first credit card. Sure, he's great at grifting, profiting off shoes or meme coins, but since he's been back in office in his first 100 days, he's spent over $220 billion more than Biden. If I gave MAGA Biden's first 100-day figures versus Trump without naming names, they could easily pick which one was more responsible. But the second you attach Trump to the bigger number, suddenly it's fake news. Number two, he doesn't.
If you want to see more, ladies and gentlemen, you got to subscribe to his TikTok and get on over there. And in this first video, I always tell my guests, I do something called politicking while black. And if you're not black, it's called politicking while living under MAGA, where we share our most petty grievances that we're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. My man, Dark Left, you get first dibs at this one. Give me any petty grievance you have while living under MAGA administration.
How about I change the narrative? How about I change the narrative? Because I know this would apply, and we could do it in a different way, because we would see videos where this would apply to the entitlement level. But I want to talk, my petty grievance right now is Costco shoppers who believe they're the only person in the store. Now, they exist in every single Costco, and I've seen them turn into I've seen the turnaround. They got the MAGA hats on, and it turns into a racial video. But on a bigger scale, there's something about the dude that walks into Costco, and he makes it like 4 feet in the door. There's 350 people behind, and he just stops to decide on my time if this is a good opportunity to purchase 450 Colgate toothbrushes.
Golly.
Now, let me tell you something about the psychology I've learned. If you will take your cart and smack it into their cart, I'm not saying crazy, but give their cart a nudge. The minute they put their hands on their cart, they feel like it has become their property. It is now their vehicle, their car, like their insurance covers it. But it isn't. Their cart's as much theirs as it is mine. So I just give them a little how do you do to determine. Don't get me wrong. Some people just space out and I give them a pass. But it's the ones who just, generally don't care. They just drift off into la la land because it's their world and it's their time and nobody else. And that actually I got that idea from seeing this MAGA dude lose his mind on a lady with she was white. It was clearly a biracial child. And he was in one line and she was in the other. And for some reason, he just decided to start berating her. The context is so stupid. I didn't really even pay attention to it. But that made me think about every time I walked into a Costco. So now I'm just going to buy a powered cart. It's going to be my own private one. It's going to have a horn. Make my win. But you tell me, what's yours?
Well, I have a few, but I'm gonna stick to one since we're in the grocery store, wholesale shopping center. I'm gonna just go at this, and y'all can cuss me out if you want to. When I'm in a grocery store and I'm in a rush, and I'm behind Yo Mima, and she's taking a damn hour after she done purchased her stuff to put her damn change in her pocketbook and then put it back into her breast. Mima, step away out the line, put your damn change in your pocketbook, and get the hell out the way so that everybody who's in a rush can get moving.
And no more writing checks. No more writing checks. I should never see another human ever write a check in a grocery store line ever again. And if you're going to do it like they did it back when I was a kid. Have that already pre-filled out. So all you got to do is jot in the amount. Yeah, checks that. All right, we could actually do a whole podcast on the etiquette of people in public. You can literally do an entire podcast on it.
You can.
It's not our format, but it would work.
It would definitely work. So, audience, please post us your petty grievances. Be sure to subscribe to his channel. You guys already know me pretty well, and I want to shout out to all the audience watching us. Thank you. Be sure to hit that like button. And if you still want to go check out shoplifegains.com, I do have my back in my day. We had 9 Planets t-shirts for all my nerds out there. Link is in description. We will go to the first subject with my man Dart Left. And Dart Left picked this one out. And I think it's a great subject to discuss because of the dynamics between me and him. A little bit on him. He's an entrepreneur. At one point in his life, he was a righty. And over the course of life, business, and experience, he's moved to be more progressive. And so the first thing we're going to cover is white privilege. What does it mean? What does it mean to Dart Left? What's the purview from someone who's white? I'll give my purview, but let's take a look at a quick clip before we dive into some of his interesting thoughts on what it's like to be a white guy and understand when people say white privilege. Here we go, just a second.
What is white privilege? White privilege describes advantages and benefits people have simply because they are white. This privilege occurs on many levels in society. It is often not seen by white people because it's the experience they know. White privilege is interacting with the police and other authorities without fear of being profiled based on skin color. It's living in a neighborhood without facing discrimination. Having parks and grocery stores nearby. It's knowing you will be treated fairly by the teachers in your classroom. Recognizing white privilege acknowledges the injustices that Black, Indigenous, and people of color experience that white people don't. It does not mean white people live free of hardships, but that racism isn't one of them.
So, Dart Left, you have a diverse history of not just living, but the things you've done in life, and you are an entrepreneur, which gives you more access to people. You're having to manage things. You are a boss. So when you hear people use the term white privilege, give me what that experience has been like for you and where you're at with it now.
Yeah. So the first time I heard it, I had a knee-jerk reaction to it because I grew up poor, because I felt like the world was constantly against me. And when I heard the concept white privilege, it made me feel like, well, maybe for some white people, but not for all of us, there's no way considering what I had done, and sparing you the long novel story I could tell you about my past. But I came to the realization, it was very, very simple, that white privilege did not mean a privileged white. And that simple concept, because like your video you just showed, that was a little more granular, right? It went into, housing and things like that. I wasn't looking at it. When I came to the conclusion, I went, oh, I get it. So when I grew up and I decided it was time to stop the nonsense and get into the real world, to move away from the bad crowd, nobody saw me as a threat because I could put on a suit and tie and suddenly I was safe. And that was where the privilege lied. And once I understood that white privilege didn't mean you were a privileged white, it just meant that your skin color did not make your life more difficult. When people pulled you over, you did. Now, I did have to worry more when I was with what we're now calling, I guess, frequently persons of color. I just called them my black friends. When I was with a bunch of black dudes in a car, there was definitely a different vibe when we got pulled over. At the same token, Hispanics. And then you don't even process it as much as a white guy when you get older and now you got a nicer car and you're by yourself and you're driving and you get pulled over. You forget that there's a lack of threat automatically assumed by a cop who has been patrolling for 10 years, that was in bad neighborhoods. Now he's in a good neighborhood. He pulls a black person over. He's automatically reactive to that black person. Whereas he pulls me over and he's like, all right, this guy's safe. So, it was a good realization. The hard part is that it's such a complex and broad term for white people to wrap their head around that I was like, where do I start it? So I did that. There's a video I posted on TikTok. I'm on Instagram now too. I'm just kind of getting this going where I try to explain that in like 90 seconds. And it's hard because I could talk about it for an hour and a half. But a lot of what I do with the dark left is really just trying to kind of come out of that shadow a little bit. Talk about things that maybe people are a little reactive to, but move the conversation forward, right? I don't want to spend, like if you and I were to sit down and say, we're going to talk about white privilege for 1 hour. I don't want to spend an hour just in the conversation of it. I want to know about how we can advance the conversation and then spread that word, because advancement is where we need to be, right? We get caught up too much in the now and the nuance. And we go, okay, if we could just all accept that white people have certain privileges, rich, poor, whatever, we have certain privileges, and then move past that, we could actually get somewhere. You see what I'm saying? And it's the getting somewhere that I'm all about. I'm not about getting caught up in a lot of the debates when people get like really they bring up one example of one time. I'm talking about on an overarching system in a country like America. White privilege is very, very simple to understand. That video that you just showed should be mandatory in school at a very young age, because as well as anybody else, nobody is born racist. We're created racist.
Nobody.
Correct. And there was a huge creator on TikTok that actually just talked a story recently about how he was brought up to be racist and he went, and went to the other side, right? He came to this normalcy where he challenged things and went, oh, so the world's not all scary. And he actually is he grew up in rural North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is the evolution of conversation that I want the left to start doing. I don't want them just screaming at MAGA, screaming about this is white privilege, and MAGA going, that's not a true thing. Black people are privileged too, or however it gets lost. I want us to understand this is where we're at and how do we move it forward? Because once we take step one, we can take step two, but we're still back at the starting blocks with this sort of round and round conversation we have.
Well, the way to move it forward, you just mentioned it. You got to start with the education very young. And unfortunately, there are some white people that know white privilege exists. They're in MAGA and don't care and try to pretend it doesn't exist when they know it does, as a way to continue to feed red meat to the MAGA base heads that are never going to change their mind about anything. They're unapologetically racist. And the only way you can chip at that huge iceberg, you've got to put this type of thing, as you said, in school, because children do not come out racist. Children do not come out the womb biased. Children come out the womb wanting love, wanting to be cared for, wanting to show love, and just want to be friends. It's taught to hate people. It's taught to see color. And one thing that gets on our nerves when we're dealing with race issues is when white people say they don't see color. That's a dead giveaway you're MAGA. Dead giveaway. Stop saying that shit. If you really want to have a conversation about the struggles minorities go through, it's nothing wrong with a white person understanding that they have a privilege. And that privilege, and you admitting that you have the privilege doesn't take anything away from you, even if you've not benefited from the privilege. But what it does is it lets people understand that you know the plight that others are going through, and you're willing to educate people on why that plight is there. And that's my take on it.
And I want to elaborate a little bit on you saying, you know, you had a couple of valid points in there. Yes, it should be taught in school. It's hard to get over parents. Parents are responsible for a lot of things. White people need to be the ones to say, because I talk about often how big this country is, right? And I can't expect somebody in rural Georgia to vote the same way as somebody in downtown Chicago, right? It's two different worlds.
Right, exactly.
But we need to show that world. We need to let people see that it's not all doom and gloom in the city. People go, well, if you don't think there's a problem, why don't you go look at the crime rate in Chicago? Okay, the crime rate's actually not as bad as people like to say it is. It's bad in parts that are impoverished, right? But there are amazingly wonderful parts of Chicago that don't have that issue. So,
right.
But if you keep beating this into a 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12, 15-year-old's head, by the time he gets to 18 and he's ready to vote, he's going to say something stupid like, I don't see color. Because if I put a white man and a black man in a room and you tell me you don't see color, then we need to have a different conversation, potentially with an ophthalmologist. But it's fine to see color. It's fine to see it. It's not okay to judge because of it, right?
Exactly.
You can see it. You just don't have to let it make your decisions, right? So this is,
right.
to me, rudimentary thinking.
But it's not for them. And part of the problem is because I'm from rural North Carolina too. And a mindset that's not just with white people, it's also with black people and a lot of people from the rural parts of southern states, is that you don't want to leave the little rural bubble you live in and experience anything else. And so when your only way to experience some of this stuff back when I was growing up was TV. And now you can live in rural wherever, never leave your bubble, and you can get all the experiences you want from the internet. But that doesn't put you in a position to be interacting with people, to know what it's like to really be around real people that you meet, that you could probably care for, that are not like whatever stereotypes the bubble that you're living in has kept you. And it can happen to city folks too, because a lot of people in the hood who live in cities don't want to leave the hood, and they are not as critically diverse mentally as someone else who's been in a diverse atmosphere. And so those are some of the crux that could be done to help with that narrative. And as you said, push us forward. But at the same time, Dark Left, we got to understand we're not going to be able to get everybody. There are some people, they're just not going to change.
And that's okay.
That's what, right, it is.
That's okay. We have to accept that, because if we try to change everybody, it's an exhaustive process, right? So 2 points to that. One, to really put a period on this, there is a reason why cities vote Democratic, right? Cities live in very cultural areas with tons of people, and they don't see, when you tell them that there's this huge immigrant invasion, they don't see it because they're living where you're telling them this immigration invasion is happening, or this crazy amount of, and they're like, no, because I live here and I don't. But if you don't live there and you live in some place in the middle of nowhere with population 13,000, you're definitely afraid because TV's telling you that's the case. Same thing with
exactly
how movies can make people think. Talk to people from the UK, have only experienced America through movies. They think like every morning is mom and dad making this big breakfast, and the kids come downstairs, eat one strip of bacon, throw a backpack on their back, and run out the door because they have to get. It's a false world, right?
Right. Right.
And I think number two is really letting go of that thinking that every time we meet somebody that disagrees with us, that's dug in, that we have to like bring them over to our side to get them to agree. They don't all have to agree. We need the message to be clear, so that when people choose to agree or disagree, they do so based on facts and data, not based on anecdotes and things of that nature. And the messaging is really important to get to everybody.
Well, I'm glad you finished it with that, because I certainly was about to jump in there and said, yes, it is one thing to disagree with people. It's another thing when a fact is a fact and someone is trying to tell you that that fact is wrong based on their opinion. Now, that's something you can't agree with. That's a conversation you're either going to debate with that person, or you're going to walk away and realize what's the point in having the conversation if accepted facts that you can Google search or chat GPT, if they're not even going to be on that playing field, there's no point in having that conversation with that person, period.
Yeah. That's 100. And I mean, I could, there's so many new, so we have basically two sides who both think they're right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we have. The left thinks that they're 100% right, and the right thinks they're 100% right. And that's because we have become so divided through cognitive bias and our media bias that it feeds ourselves in that echo chamber, right? But echo chambers are really built of ego, and they're actually really fragile. That's why we don't like to let anybody into it, because it would counter what we're saying. So there eventually has to be this point. For me, it was a really long process. And for the people that are listening, I was a Republican, and I always like to clarify that I was socially liberal. I believe that Republicans, and I say believed as in past tense, were good for small business, were good for tax reform. And I learned that just wasn't the case, but you couldn't have yelled me into it. I needed to see it over time. Trump in 2015, that was the end for me. That was my breaking point. But a lot of people that feel a certain way, like these alpha males who are 21 years old and they think that, MAGA's tough and liberals are weak, they got to be MAGA. They haven't reached that point in their life yet where they're open to it. So that's going to take time with them. A lot of people start liberal and become conservative. That was the case for a lot of years. I don't think that exists anymore, because the boomers are way gone. Where a boomer might have been liberal in the 70s and they became really conservative in their old age. It's all changed. Conservatism has changed. Things have really, they've kind of been broken apart and fallen out. And now we're trying to piece back together what it is. And let me say this. The Trump day is going to end. He's already almost 80, right? That's going to go away. What the Republican Party does and what the Democratic and Liberal Party does after that happens is going to determine the next 10, 15, 20 years. That will be the determining factor, because it's going to be either more of the same for the right? I don't know, Don Jr. is going to jump in or someone else. And the left is going to keep, or it's going to completely be built up a different way and we can reattack this. But that's a wait and see scenario.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, post your comments on what you think about the conversation around white privilege, how to properly educate people, how to feel people out, so that they understand that just because they have this privilege doesn't mean you're a red herring or you're taking away something from someone. It just means that you're predisposed to not have to deal with certain barriers that some people of color have to go through. And since he hit on kind of talking about the Democratic Party, I will go to his second point, which is, what is the Democratic Party going to do? How can the Democratic Party recapture votes for people that sat on their hands? I have another video for that. But before I go to that video, I want you guys to be sure to like this video. Be sure to download the podcast. You can reach the podcast wherever you get them. It is called Politics of Being Black in America. Dark Left, you can find him on TikTok. His link is in description. Please go and join and support us as we're trying to grow this ever-changing landscape. I like to call it progressive partnerships for politics, is what I'm calling all the people I'm interviewing and meeting with, so that we can really progress things forward. Getting to the Democrats, take a look at this. I'm interested to know what you're going to think about this, because this person's going to say a lot of stuff that really means nothing. And sometimes it gets on my nerve when I hear these fucking word salads that don't have dressing on them. So take a look at this.
Win some of those voters back, specifically men, which I know has been a big focus for you.
We should just try talking to them, number one. We had to accept reality when we heard that people were still pissed off about the economy. We couldn't lie to ourselves and say, like, well, inflation is going down and wages are going up. That's not what was happening. You heard it at the doors. You heard it talking to voters. I heard it in the grocery store. I heard it from Latino men who really, really felt that they had been abandoned. And these are men that believe they could work their way out of any problem. They'll add an extra job, they'll cut here, cut there. And the Democrats just never wanted to really talk to them in a way that would help them kind of at least assuage fears, because we wanted to believe the lie that was not actually in front of us.
Well, Dark Left, you've got some opinions about the steps Democrats need to take. my question to you in regards to what he said, well, and in general to what you might say, how do you convince a body of people of what's the truth if they don't want to hear it? How can you, like when he talked about the price of this and the price of that, yeah, it was high, but it wasn't as high as it was coming right out the pandemic for Joe Biden. But the problem is a lot of people don't understand economics. And when you have rampant inflation, prices go up really, really fast, like a rocket ship, and they stare their way down, which they did, and they got it down, but people didn't feel the effects of it. And so when you try to explain this to people who might got enraged by Biden, how do you tell them that and do it in a way where they can understand that prices did go down? We did the best we could, but you're not realizing the facts without insulting someone. Let me know what you think about that, and go ahead and drop what you think the Democrats have to do in order to get some of those voters back.
Well, it's first of all, what he's saying without saying it, he's not going elaborate enough. So when the Democrats are saying, hey, inflation's down, inflation is down. It was. But what the Democrats are forgetting to do was also say, I understand that it may not be down far enough for you, because people that are broke do not care about how good the economy is doing.
Right.
And you lose all of those voters the minute you say inflation's down, the economy's up, X number of jobs were. But if you've got, let's say, 5-6 million voters that are making $35,000 a year, can't cover their bills, struggling to pay rent, they don't want to hear that inflation is down because it doesn't resonate. So the way to do it is, you can talk about that factually, because I think it matters. Inflation being down, eggs became a thing. But I think you have to speak to the people and saying, I know you're still struggling and your wage is where we're at. And we've not, wages have stagnated forever. The only reason I ever made more money is because I was in businesses where I wasn't paid hourly. I could continue to grow and then did my own thing. So if not, I'd be stuck in the same rut. And I feel for those people. That comes down to the left's messaging. This was very easy for the right to do. The left said inflation is down, the economy's improving. It was a fact. Every statistic looked it up. The right said, we're going to talk to the people that own businesses that are still struggling. So all they had to do was go, inflation is up, the economy sucks, vote for me. And people went, they're right. And that was it for them. There were so many people I watched on election night coming out of voting booths, doing exit polls, that were Asian and Indian and Black and Hispanic, that all said, who did you vote for? A lot of them would say, I voted for Trump. They would say, why? And the response was overwhelmingly, because I think he's better for the economy. And there lies a problem in the messaging. You thought he was better for the economy because he said it.
Exactly.
Biden didn't say inflation is down, I'm better for the economy, I will bring it down, this is what I'm going to do. Trump just sat back and talked like a fifth grader, right? And said, I'm better for the economy, he sucks. I will bring jobs, he sucks. I'm better for the stock market. And that's all you have to say to people who are desperate. They're going to listen. And I have analogies I use with people about water, and someone has enough water and other people are thirsty. And the guy's telling you, hey, there's plenty of water to go around. That's fine for the people that have water. But the people that are thirsty, if somebody comes up and says, I can get you more water, they're going to lean to that person, even if he's lying. That's what happens here. So the message is skewed.
So basically, on some level, you want Democrats to lie.
No, I want them to expand, right? So what I want them to say is, I'm better for the economy because here's where he was at and here's where we're at. But I also understand that you're not making enough money, that you need me to do something, because you need to speak to the people that just want to know if they vote for you, that it will help them. Because Trump, everybody knew Trump was going to help billionaires. There's clips of them that were leaked online. They didn't care. They didn't listen. They went, doesn't matter. He's going to help me. Doesn't matter. He's better for the economy. Doesn't matter. They don't care. La, 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 la. That's the way that the human mind works. Listen, we're not that intelligent in America. And our education system proves that. And the fact that Trump said, I love the uneducated, and it never hurt him, tells you that he knew how to appeal to that base. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. There are only so many wealthy people in this country, and the wealthy people support the Republicans. And if only wealthy people voted for Republicans, they would never win. Right. So the wealthy people put money in to convince the poor people that the wealthy people are for them. And the Democrats need to get a better job in messaging that Democrats are for them. And to add on to that point, the Democrats have to toughen up. They have to get stronger. They have to get louder. I mean, look at if you saw a truck driving down the road right now, anywhere in a city that had a American flag flying from it, you would assume, rightfully so, that was probably a Trump supporter, because they literally stripped the flag and made patriotism about them. That's how loud their messaging was. They made it like negative for you to be proud of a flag. The Democrats have to accept that happened and find a way to counter it and say, no, we're proud too. We do want better for this country. And just because you're loud about it, and just because you have a We the People tattoo, and just because you have more flags does not make you more patriotic, because that's the messaging they've got. So the Democrats have to get tougher, and they have to message like it matters, because the messaging on the left is terrible. In my opinion, it's terrible. Facts all day. You and I could go over facts all day. They're going to support Democrats, but messaging, they just don't get it done.
Okay, now that's where I'll come to agreement with you. We do need a better messenger. We need someone who's intelligent that can deliver the message like a homeboy. We need that. Secondly, we also need to understand that it wasn't all about the price of inflation, gas, and eggs.
Right.
Trump was transparent about what he was going to do. Project 2025 was out there. Even though Trump lied and said he had nothing to do with it, his buddy Stephen Miller helped draft it. And everybody knows that they're tied at the hip like dominoes and Dalmatians. They're tied at the hip. And this man has all these felonies, sex abuse, failed businesses, which blows my mind. This came down to something bigger than the money. This came down to, there was a piece of it where people didn't want a woman. There was a piece of it where people didn't want a black woman. And then it came down to, who makes me feel better? Who is making me feel better? Because you're able to overlook everything that this man has done wrong and say, I'm not going to vote for a candidate who's been a senator, who's been a lawyer, who's highly qualified. I'm going to vote for this failed businessman who really and truly didn't become a full-fledged billionaire till he became president. And he got that because he started using the office of the presidency to enrich himself. And someone has got to get out here on Front Street and remind the electorate that stuff is not going to be helpful to you long-term. But more importantly, you've got to talk about in a better manner what you're going to do for people. Kamala was going to help people with $25,000 to get a home. That wasn't enough. Kamala was going to continue to pay for student loans. That wasn't enough. And as a business owner, and you being a business owner, I knew that wouldn't be enough, because there are a lot of people who are in between those two things that need support. There are a lot of small business people that make up every county, every city, that are electricians, plumbers who could use a boost, and they get upset when they see Amazon move into the town and get a $10 million tax credit, and then don't have to pay taxes for 8 to 10 years, and then get money up front. The Democrats should have messaged what they could do to enrich middle class and small business, along with all the other ancillary things they said. And they've got to figure out a way to say this like you're a homeboy or homegirl.
Two points to that. One of the things that Trump did, Kamala came out and said she started really pushing the no tax on tips, right? And he saw the momentum. That was a major momentum shift. So what he did is he came out and said, I've been saying no tax on tips. I'm the one that's been doing it. She took it from me. And people went, oh, yeah, I guess she did. And he started to get signs made to go up at his rallies that were covered on it that said no tax on tips. And that was it. And again, I say that because it supports the fact that their messaging is better. They drove that in. Here's the problem. The bill that was just presented, it actually has a no tax on tips line in it. What nobody's paying attention to is that the line is only for cash tips.
Exactly.
So here we are in 2025. 98% of transactions are done by Apple Pay, credit cards, Venmo, etc. And he puts it in cash tips. And let's be honest, nobody's reporting their cash tips, right? So
Nobody.
You're not being taxed on them already. So
Right.
it's a falsity. And he used it. Where I think the Democrats actually would have put it in play, he used it to get those votes away from her with no intention of doing it. It made no difference. He doesn't care. And his approval ratings support it, right? Which the right so eloquently calls fake, right? Because apparently it's only true if it comes from them. Even Fox News, which apparently Fox has really good polling, they showed his approval rating down, and it just made viewers mad who said they're falling in with centrist and we shouldn't follow them. So I say all that to say, Kamala had an idea, something Trump had mentioned, I don't know when before. He took it, he made it louder, he put up signs, he said, oh, I'm not going to tax overtime too. So it literally stole any potential, not any, but it stole a lot of voters away from her. And now there's nothing in the bill about no tax on overtime. And the only thing people are going to get their tax on, which, let me be clear, if you didn't report cash tips before, you're certainly not going to report them now just so you don't get taxed on them. That doesn't make any sense, right? And it's also a little suspicious that you would report tax tips for 4 years to not get taxed and then start a trend with the government where in year 5, suddenly you wouldn't be reporting them again. It would look like your income fell. So the whole thing comes back to messaging. And it's really what the left has to work on. They've got to get louder. They've got to get stronger. And they also have to realize that repetition matters. Trump's whole concept, heavily rooted in some ugly history. But the concept was, if you continue to repeat it enough, people will believe it's true. It doesn't matter what it is you say. If you say it enough over and over and over and over, people will eventually believe it's true. And I say this often to people. I do believe a lot of people on the right really do believe in what he's doing and what he said. I do believe a lot of them think he's perfectly innocent and that he is a great businessman. I think they truly believe that he never committed a crime and that it really was a witch hunt. That is the problem, because their messaging was so strong that it convinced people to throw out any relative logic, any process of deduction, and go, I agree. Yes, almost like brainwashing. So it always will come back to messaging, and the left has to improve it. And I sure as hell hope that as I continue to push dark left as a group, not just as me, that we can improve on that messaging and get it louder.
Yeah, we need the messaging, but we also, like I said, this goes back to getting education and being able to get critical thinking skills, because you should have a curiosity to think for your damn self and check to see if this stuff he's saying is true or not. And I think sometimes what the Democrats do is they overlook things that they think people are just automatically know is a lie. And with Trump, they do the whole tactic of they're just going to bum rush the field with just tons of lies. And it becomes difficult to go and have conversations with people to overcome all of them. But you have got to get a foundation to the point where people are wanting to think critically and not just believing what is said on TV, what is said on social media.
What you're talking about is a two-pronged effect. The first one would be, yes, it would be rooted in educating younger people so that they're not so easy to fall in line with what they hear. That would be a step. But the other side of it is you got to work on it now, because midterms are in 18 months and there's another presidency in 3.5 years. So it's kind of a combination of both of those things to work at both angles to affect change. And one of the things I can use as a straight, white, middle-aged guy is, as a business owner, Trump doing the tax cuts he's going to do are good for me. I don't vote for me. I vote for my daughter and my wife and my employees and the people in my neighborhood. I vote on a bigger scale. And if that means I have to pay some more in taxes, to make this country a little bit better and a little bit safer and a little bit more rationalized, then that's a sacrifice I am 100% willing to make. So people like me need to be a louder voice than the people that sit back and go, I'm just going to do what is best for me. I'm going to do this, and it's going to save me $36,000 next year. That's the thinking that got us into this problem. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I agree, but not enough. The same people who will sit here and tell you poor folks to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, tighten your fucking belts, are the same ones who are not willing to take that same sacrifice and do it for the American people. One thing that I can do a petty grievance on that gets on my nerves is people, when they see folks in the military gear, they always want to say thank you for your service. That shit pisses me off, because if you really want to thank them, pay them. If you really want them to be thanked, fortify the VA, fortify job security when they're done, and fortify the payment when they're in there. And stop using thank you for your service as a fucking grift to avoid being responsible for helping them progress their life, because they are doing all these sacrificial things to protect our freedoms. So if you really, we need shared sacrifice, and we have too many people that are at the top and in control that are not willing to do what me and you are willing to do. And the only way we can do that, we've got to keep meeting with each other, like minds, and educating people on how that benefits the whole economy and not just the percent where you live at. And that's what we got to do.
Yeah. So, getting together, talking, communicating, these things are really important. But I think a lot of people lose sight of what matters at a local level. Like they look at the big yell, right? And that's the presidency. You're never going to reach that guy. You're not going to reach the people underneath him. But if you start at a really small level, you can really expand on the impact you have, because people feel helpless. But the truth is, the honest to God truth is, the power is in the people. The citizens of this country have far more power as a unit than they'll ever understand, because the government's not going to want us to do that. That's why protesting exists. That's how civil rights came to be. That's how pushing back on the Vietnam War came to be. That's when people said, enough of this. And I want to drive this point home, especially to anybody that might be listening to this. They've asked, when does it happen? When do people really push back? When it starts to impact their money, their family, that's when you see people really start to lose it. Because some of the biggest protests you'll have is they overturn Roe v. Wade, women flood the streets, right? You need to be flooding the streets before that. When people lose their money. I've done a couple of segments on Trump voter regrets. All these people that I voted for you, but I lost my 401k. This isn't okay. I'm regretting my vote. Yeah, now because it's impacting you. Now we've got a problem. And now they get vocal. So the more people, if you look at uprisings throughout the globe, anytime major economies have crashed, I don't care if you're what country you're in, people spill out into the streets and they'll start fighting against tanks and water cannons because they're broke, right? So that's when the breaking point is. We need to be smarter to do it ahead of time. We need to get louder now. And I want to be clear when I say that. It doesn't mean violent. It doesn't mean trashing cars. That's a detractor from the message. If you take 20,000 people and stand them in front of the White House with signs and never say a word, that speaks volumes. The minute they light one car on fire, that's all the news is going to cover, right? So the voice has to be done in a very smart way, a loud and a critical way, but an effective way, not in a destructive way. We got to be a little smarter than that nowadays.
Now, on that one, I'm gonna disagree with you on. I'm versed with a little bit of history myself, and politicians, when they see you protesting and you're peaceful, they laugh at your ass. The only thing that gets their attention is when protests go violent. Everybody thinks that Martin Luther King was nonviolent. He was violent. He just didn't lead people to fight. He incited violence on his people so that would be seen and more people would understand the plight that minorities went through. Take January the 6th. That shit was as violent as it gets. You had people pooping on Nancy Pelosi's desk. You had cops getting chased. And the American people still voted for the person that incited that, and then still are caking up for this guy when he let most of the people that got convicted for an insurrection on the Capitol go. I get what you're trying to say, But history says that what works is violent protest. Take the Tea Party. Way back when they started taking that tea and violently throwing it out the ships, violently cracking it on people's property. That's when the government stood up and said, oh, we better do something. And now people stood up to this and said, you know what? I like what those people did. I'm going to vote for Trump. And I'm not telling anybody to go out there and be violent. I'm not saying that. But I am saying history says that what gets governments worried is the threat of an uprising by a combined group of people that are not just in one party, but when all the parties combine, that's when you're going to see the government really say, okay, we need to get into shape. And I hope we can all combine, Democrats and Republicans, to fight back against what's going on with wealth, against what's going on with the way they vote. And half of the time, the people that voted for MAGA are shooting themselves in the foot because they don't care about their income. They do care, but what they care about more is the person that they put in office makes them feel good because he is going after those people that are preventing them from prospering.
The one thing that bonds people, that crosses racial lines, religious lines, family lines, the one common denominator is money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take anybody, a group of people, and strip them of their money, they will join together as a common force. They will throw everything that they ever believed out the window because now they're all together. People are poor together. They're broke together. They're successful together. They're wealthy together. And if there was ever going to be anything that got carried away, it would be because people that had money lost it. I mean, look, when I talk about messaging again, the messaging of the economy is going to be great. Don't worry about it. We're doing things no one's ever done. And people go, oh yeah, it is. Are the same people that either haven't checked their 401k or checked their 401k and thought it was okay. Right? I guess they don't understand high numbers and low numbers. Right. And that nobody panics over that because they move up and they move down. But if they kept going down and people kept losing jobs and the market really came to be this negative point, you would see people on the other side start to stand up. I don't want to wait for them. I want to continue to push the message out saying, don't listen to the people that tell you they're the party of the Constitution when they constantly do things to break it. The fact that they're better at they say, here's what they do. It's real simple. I'm going to call everything that disagrees with me fake news so I can lie. And then if anyone challenges me, my people will just say it's fake. It's a very simple concept and it works. It's very effective. You can't argue with somebody who just says that's fake news. You can't debate it. Right. So you just go, okay, well, I guess there's no point in this. So that, that comes back to messaging again, that we have to get better at.
And it also comes down to, you need to be a smarter, critical thinker. You got to get educated. I get what you're saying about you've got to get the messaging for the midterms, but long game, you've got to get people to be more educated so that if somebody says something, instead of you just taking it as gospel, you go and seek the truth. And we have plenty of vessels right now with all this AI that can give you the truth.
Yeah, it's not hard to find, right? It's not complicated. That's part of the problem. There's almost too much information. I don't say too much is a bad thing. I just mean there's so much
analysis paralysis.
Exactly. You can actually, because there's so much information, if you Google something a certain way, you'll find a way to make it support your theory. And critical thinking is something that takes time, right? So to your point, sure, we can improve critical thinking, but I'm telling you, we have to simplify the message and the process to get the people that are not going to, because you're not going to go to someone and go, I got a good idea, you need to be a critical thinker. They're going to, I don't want to be a critical thinker. I want you to tell me what it's going to take, why I should vote for you. And like, I love, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, I love Candace Owens because she gives zero shits. She will get on any platform at any time and say whatever it is she thinks. She will challenge people anytime. And I love and respect that somebody will do that. That's more of the message that we need to get out, what she's doing. I think what her biggest hurdle is that she's Black. That's just a massive hurdle.
The other massive hurdle is usually she's fake news. Like she calls everybody else fake news.
Wait.
She's fake news.
I need to retract what I just said. I said Candace Owen. That's not who I'm thinking of. The name just literally escaped. Candace Owens is the Fox lady, right?
No, Candace Owens is the black social media girl that for the longest time was always caking up for the Republican Party. She was buying into the MAGA stuff. And now that she didn't get a job with the Trump administration, she's kind of retracting a lot of what she's saying and trying to come back and be a little bit more wholesome to the African American community when we done kicked her ass out from the cookout.
Yeah, it's not her that I'm thinking of, and I can't come up with the name. She's from Texas. She's
Jasmine Crockett.
Crockett. I don't know how I got to Candace from Crockett. Jasmine Crockett. Yes, thank you. I would have felt terrible if we finished doing this podcast and then
Lord have mercy. I hope she don't, because we talk, and I hope she don't look at this. I'm gonna have to clean this up for you, my brother. I'm gonna have to clean it up.
No, it isn't. It's for some reason I crossed Candace with Crockett, and that was it. I couldn't get out of that cycle. Yeah. So I think from a Democratic side, we need people more like Crockett who will come out and just say it. Like just do it. Like I love Pete Buttigieg. I think he's unflappable. He's boring. I don't know that he could get the message across. People say, I love him. Yes, I love him too. But we can't do another blah, 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 blah. We need somebody who is going to have, like, part of the reason Barack got elected is because the dude could talk to people. He could convey a message. He could speak to people on their level. He didn't have to sound like he graduated from UPenn with a business degree. He just talked to people, and he wasn't afraid to stand up for what was right and call out bullshit. He did those things. We've got to get somebody that can do that. We really do. And all of us, Lamont, are all parts of that puzzle. It's you and me are two, and we're nothing, right? But if we get, if we expand that, every one of us gets 10 or 20. That's how the message moves, and that's how we find somebody that can really help. Look, I hate to break it to the right. Mexicans aren't going away. Blacks aren't going away. Immigration has been here since the dawn of time. They'll always be here. So you can fight your whatever racist war you want to fight. It's a losing battle. Eventually, good will prevail. I mean, Germany's a great example of it. Good does prevail. It's a little bit slower because evil, or bad, if we want to call it, tends to be very destructive in the forefront, and it tends to come in with a sledgehammer. Good is a really slow build. And for one, I want to be on the right side of history. When this story is told in 20 or 30 years in history class, I don't want to look back on a video where, I was on the wrong side supporting the wrong thing. So I think a lot of what I would say will always come back to the left has to get better with messaging. They've got to be tougher. We've got to learn from the failures. We've got to evolve. And we need to get a mix of the Pete Buttigieg and the Jasmine Crockett's and the Shapiros and the Tim Walt. We got to get them all and get them yelling as loud as possible. If we're going to affect change. From what I see. I mean, from my standpoint, what do I know?
Yeah, we do definitely need better messengers. We do. Like, and I'll get you out of here on this, audience. There was a poll done, and it's, for some people it's weird. For me and Dart Left, we get it. Some of the same people that voted for Trump and had favorable polling for Trump also like Bernie Sanders. What is the common thread? They both say what the hell is on their mind, and they don't waver. Now, Bernie tells the truth a whole lot more than Trump. And by saying that, I'm not saying that everything Bernie says is always the truth. I'm saying you can rely on him telling the truth a lot more than Trump, but the way he delivers the message is attractive to people because they, for years, are tired of the used car salesman style politician.
The biggest thing that really pushed off people on Bernie Sanders was the right said he's a socialist, and that was the end of it, right? He couldn't come back from that because they are the kings of tagging people with one-liners and stamping them, labeling them, and that's it, right? So that's sort of a battle that Bernie had. I'm not a socialist. I mean, I can't be a business owner and a socialist in the purest sense of it. But the same people that often criticize the concept of socialism are the same ones receiving Social Security benefits or Medicare benefits or things that are, in theory, a socialist program, right? Everybody pays in and they share back out. But once you give somebody a name, in the 80s, it was communist, if you recall.
Yep.
Everybody was afraid of of Russia, and they were commies. And Republicans stood up to Russia. Reagan stood up to Russia. Now we have people that are in bed with Russia because they say Putin's a good guy and Joe Biden's a bad guy, and they buy it. So even with Sanders, their messaging was better in anti-Sanders than it was for Sanders. I don't know that I've ever seen a political candidate who hit all marks, right? I mean, there's always things you go like, I don't really agree with that, but 80% of it is better than, and it gets off track because Bernie could have 100 ideas and 65 of them could be great, but all people are going to do is harp on the 35 that are terrible, right? And that's it's just not fair. Where I could look at Trump's and go, they're all terrible. Tariffs are a terrible idea. You're never going to do that with taxes. You're never going to do that with tips. This is all a terrible idea. I mean, in theory, it makes sense, right? And I'll sort of end out with this. There was a whole thing going on where he's talking about executive orders again, right? Which I tell people all the time, Google how executive orders work so you can get an understanding of the difference between what an executive order is and what happens when a bill gets pushed through Congress. They're very, very different.
Right.
But he puts this thing up saying prescription prices are going to be lower. And then Republicans said, or Democrats said, not all of them, there were just some comments about if they drop lower, would there be a shortage in medication? And the right went crazy. Oh, you guys hate America. You don't want lower prescription. Let me explain something to you. There's nobody on either side of the political aisle that doesn't want affordable prescriptions. So if Trump could lower affordable prescriptions, I would say, great. I think that's a good thing. It doesn't mean I support him as a person, as a president, as a man, as a human. But if he did that one thing, I could easily identify and go, good, he's helping some people out because things are crazy expensive. But he doesn't do it the right way. He does it through executive order and sound bites, not sound decisions, not sound policy. Just, I take this, I sign, I hold it up, I take a picture. It covers the news for 3 or 4 days, and then we go on to the next thing.
Right. It's called flood the zone. It's called flood the zone is what they're doing. So, ladies and gentlemen, post your comments. Let us know what you think. This will be up on the podcast tomorrow. The link for Dark Left is in the video description. Don't worry. You'll see more of him up here with me, and you'll be seeing more of us as we expand our territories and bring more people in to try to get this conversation going, to turn it into action. Don't forget to like the video, comment, subscribe. You want more? Go to his TikTok. Link is in description. Till that next Sexy as Hell video, we're out.
Thank you.
That was a good one, man.
You like it?
That